The man nobody recognized, Keanu Reeves, sat alone in the back seat of a modest taxi, staring out the window as the city lights flickered past him, like tiny stars trying to survive the dark. He wore an old gray hoodie and jeans that looked too baggy for someone like him. He touched the brim of a faded cap that hid most of his face. In that moment, he did not look like a Hollywood superstar. He looked like a man carrying a secret. This was not a movie set. This was real. Keanu had made up his mind weeks ago that he needed to understand something people around him often forgot. What it felt like to start over, to be invisible, to have no one praise your name or open doors just because you were famous. He wanted to find the cracks in the world that fame could never show him. He wanted to feel how it was to be truly ordinary. The taxi stopped in front of a small grocery store on the corner of an old street. The store sign flickered with half-lit letters, tired from years of wind and rain. Inside, the shelves were mostly stocked but not in perfect order. The place smelled of fresh bread and floor cleaner. He paid the driver with a gentle nod, pulled his backpack over his shoulder, and stepped out into the chilly night. The cold bit his fingers, but he liked it. It reminded him he was alive. Earlier that week, Keanu had sent a fake resume to this store under the name John Kennedy. It was a simple name, easy to forget, but enough to get him through the door. No photo, no fancy words, just a man looking for work. The owner, an older woman named Mary, had called him the same day. She was desperate for help. Her store had been losing money ever since a new supermarket opened a few blocks away. She could not afford fancy workers. She needed someone who would sweep the floor, stack boxes, and greet customers with a smile. Keanu promised he could do all of that. As he opened the squeaky glass door, a bell above his head gave a soft jingle. Mary stood behind the counter, counting coins. Her eyes were tired but warm. She looked up at Keanu, not knowing who he really was. To her, he was just John. "You're here early," Mary said with a soft smile. "That's good. We need to get these crates unloaded before the morning rush." Keanu nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I'm ready." She handed him a faded apron. It smelled of flour and old soap. He tied it around his waist, feeling its weight like a promise he had made to himself. He knew he was about to see the world from a place he had not seen in years, the bottom. Hours passed. Keanu worked in silence, lifting heavy boxes, wiping down dusty shelves, and sweeping crumbs into a rusted dustpan. Each customer who walked in barely looked at him. They spoke to Mary. They paid for their groceries. They left. Nobody knew that the man bagging their apples was the same man they watched in blockbuster movies. Every Friday night. By midnight, Keanu's back ached. He felt sweat cling to his shirt. But something strange happened. He felt good. He felt real. There was no camera, no director telling him where to stand or how to smile. There was only the rhythm of work, the sound of the cash register, and the quiet hum of an old refrigerator. Mary brought him a cup of tea as they sat on milk crates. In the back room, the floor was cold, but the tea warmed his hands. She looked at him closely, noticing how gentle his eyes were. "You're a hard worker, John," she said. "Most young men these days don't care about small jobs like this. They want something big without earning it." Keanu looked at her and felt a pang in his chest. Here was a woman who had built her life on honesty and struggle, yet she could still smile at a stranger in the middle of the night. "I just want to help," he said simply. Mary nodded. Sometimes that's all the world needs. As he finished his tea, Keanu thought about the days ahead. He knew the real test was not just sweeping floors or lifting boxes. The real test would be how he handled the people he would meet, the rude customers, the tired families, the wealthy who might look down on him, and the poor who might look up to him. Each interaction would be a lesson. Outside, the city slept, while Keanu stood in the darkness of the alley behind the store, throwing empty boxes into the dumpster. He looked up at the stars peeking through the city smog and took a deep breath. He knew this undercover journey would change him. He just didn't know how much. As he turned to head back inside, he heard voices near the front entrance. Raised, harsh voices. A young man was shouting at Mary. Keanu froze for a moment, then rushed forward, his heartbeat pounding like a drum. Little did he know, This was only the beginning of what would become the most life-changing week of his life. The late-night argument. Keanu pushed open the back door and stepped into the store, the bell above the entrance ringing loud in the tense silence. He saw Mary standing behind the counter, her shoulders stiff, her eyes worried. In front of her was a young man with messy hair and a scruffy jacket. He looked angry, his hands balled into fists as he leaned over the counter, shouting, "I told you I'll pay you back next week," the young man yelled. His voice cracked like dry wood. "Why are you making such a big deal about it?" Mary's voice trembled, but she stood her ground. "I'm sorry, Sam. I can't keep giving you food on credit. I have bills to pay too. The store is already in trouble." Keanu stepped closer, staying half-hidden behind a rack of canned soup. He watched the young man, who couldn't be older than 20, slam his palm on the counter. A few coins rattled on the glass. "My mom's sick," Sam hissed. "She needs medicine. You know that. You used to help us. Now you're acting like you don't care." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "I do care, Sam. But I can't afford to keep giving things for free. I wish I could." Keanu felt something stir deep inside him. He had seen this before. People stuck in a corner, too proud to ask for help but too desperate to keep pretending. He stepped out from behind the rack and spoke softly. "Is everything okay?" Sam spun around, eyes wide. He looked at Keanu with the same glare he had given Mary. "Who are you, the new guy?" Keanu nodded. "Yeah, my name's John. I'm just here to work." Sam scoffed. "Then stay out of this, John. You don't know anything about us." Double quotes. Keanu held up his hands. "You're right. I don't know you. But maybe you can help me understand." Sam stared at him, his jaw tight. For a moment, he looked like he might say something else. Instead, he grabbed a loaf of bread from the counter and stuffed it under his arm. "I'll pay you back," he muttered to Mary. "Just don't call the cops, okay?" Mary didn't move. She just nodded, wiping her eyes with her apron. The door slammed behind Sam as he stormed out into the night. Keanu stood in the sudden quiet, his heart heavy. He turned to Mary, who was now leaning against the counter like all the strength had drained from her bones. "Why didn't you stop him?" Keanu asked gently. Mary looked at him with tired eyes. "He's a good kid, just lost. His father ran out on them. His mother can't work. They barely have enough for rent. I've known him since he was a boy. I can't turn my back on him, even if I can't really afford to help." Keanu felt his chest tighten. The world he lived in was so far from this one. A world where people dropped thousands on fancy dinners while a young man like Sam had to steal bread for his mother. He sat down on a milk crate next to Mary. "What if he doesn't pay you back?" Keanu asked. Mary shrugged. "Then he doesn't. I lose a few dollars. He keeps his pride. Sometimes that's worth more." Keanu didn't say anything for a while. He just listened to the hum of the old refrigerator and the soft drip of a leaking pipe. He knew he couldn't fix everything overnight, but he also knew he couldn't just stand by and watch. "Mary," he said slowly, "what if there was a way to help him, really help him? Not just giving him food for free, but giving him a chance to stand on his own." Mary looked at him, a flicker of hope lighting up her eyes. "What do you mean?" Keanu took a deep breath. "What if we gave him a job? I can talk to him tomorrow. Maybe he could help here. He could earn some money, take care of his mom, and maybe feel like he's worth something again." Mary sighed. "I've tried, John. He always says he'll work, but he never shows up. Maybe he needs someone to believe in him," Keanu said quietly. "Someone who won't give up on him." Mary studied Keanu's face for a long moment, not knowing she was looking at a man whom millions adored, but who now wanted nothing more than to lift one broken soul. She nodded. Double quotes. "If you can get him to say yes, I'll find a way to pay him." Keanu smiled, a small smile that carried the weight of a promise. "I'll try." Later that night, as he walked home through the empty streets, Keanu felt the cold wind whip against his face. He could have been in a warm hotel suite, with room service and soft sheets. Instead, he was here, alone, under the streetlights, thinking about a boy named Sam, who had no idea who was about to fight for him. Keanu didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if Sam would listen, or if the world would let him make a difference. But he knew this. He would not walk away. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The off-earth next morning, the air was thick with a promise of rain. Keanu arrived at the grocery store before sunrise. The city felt softer when the streets were empty, as if the world was giving him a moment to breathe before life got busy. Again, Mary was already there, arranging apples in neat rows. She looked up when Keanu walked in, her face brighter than it had been the night before. But he could see the worry still tucked behind her smile. They both knew today would not be easy. "Did you sleep at all?" Mary asked. Keanu shrugged and gave her a small grin. "A little. You?" "Same," she said. "Do you really think he'll listen to you?" Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he slipped on his apron and got to work stacking boxes near the door. Every time the bell rang, he glanced up, half hoping and half doubting that Sam would walk through. It wasn't until nearly noon, when the sky had turned a heavy gray, that the door swung open and a gust of cold wind blew in. Sam stood there, his eyes shifting from Keanu to Mary and then down to the floor. He still looked angry, but this time the anger seemed tired, like it didn't have the strength to keep burning. Keanu put down the box he was carrying and walked up to him. He kept his voice calm. "Gentle." "Sam, can we talk for a minute?" Sam narrowed his eyes. "Look, if you're here to tell me to pay back what I owe, save it. I'll do it when I can." "That's not why I want to talk," Keanu said. Mary stayed behind the counter, pretending to count coins but listening closely. The other customers gave them curious glances, but moved on quickly. Keanu gestured to the corner by the window, where they could speak quietly. Sam hesitated but followed, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. Keanu looked him in the eye. "I know you're trying. I know you're carrying a lot on your shoulders. But stealing bread isn't going to fix anything. You know that, right?" Sam flinched like he'd been slapped, but then he just sighed. "You think I don't know that? My mom's medicine costs more than our rent. My part-time job cut my hours. Nobody cares, man. They just say sorry, not our problem. So I do what I have to." Keanu nodded slowly. "What if I told you? There's another way. What if we could find you steady work right here? You help out at the store. You earn what you need, and you don't have to steal." Sam snorted. "Mary's gonna pay me. She can barely keep this place open." "Mary wants to help you," Keanu said firmly. "But you have to want it to. You can't just show up for a day and disappear. You can't take the easy way out when it gets hard." Sam looked out the window, his reflection blurry in the glass. For a moment, he seemed younger, just a boy who had run out of luck too soon. "Why do you care?" Sam asked, his voice cracking. "You don't know me." Keanu's chest tightened. He wished he could tell Sam the truth, that he was Keanu Reeves, that he'd seen enough heartbreak in his own life to recognize it in others. But he couldn't break his cover, not yet. "Maybe I see something in you," he said softly. "Someone worth fighting for." The store fell quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock. Above the door, the rain finally started, tapping gently on the glass like the world was holding its breath. Sam stared at his shoes. "I don't know if I can do this." "You can," Keanu said. "I'll help you. I'll be here every day." "Same as you. We'll figure it out together." Sam didn't say yes, he didn't say no. Instead, he walked over to Mary and mumbled something Keanu couldn't hear. Mary nodded and handed him an apron that looked like it had seen better days. Sam slipped it on, shoulders hunched, but eyes a little clearer. Keanu watched him walk into the back room to grab a broom. He felt something warm bloom in his chest. Maybe this was a small step, but it was real. No cameras, no script. Just a boy sweeping the floor to buy bread for his mother. The rest of the day passed in quiet work. Customers came and went, barely noticing the new boy cleaning up the spilled rice or stacking cans. A few gave him strange looks when he dropped something or worked too slow, but Sam kept going. Every time he looked like he might quit, Keanu caught his eye and gave him a small nod, a silent promise that he was not alone. By closing time, Mary sat with them in the back room, handing out cups of warm tea. She reached into the old cash register and pulled out a few folded bills. She held them out to Sam. "It's not much," she said, her voice soft, "but it's a start." Sam took the money in his rough hands. He didn't smile, but he didn't look angry anymore either. He just nodded, his eyes shining in the dim light. "Thanks," he whispered. Keanu leaned back against the wall, sipping his tea. Outside, the rain poured down harder now, drumming on the roof like a song only the night could hear. In that tiny grocery store, 3 people sat together: an old shopkeeper, a boy trying to make things right, and a man whose real name nobody knew yet. And for the first time in a long time, hope felt like something they could hold. Asterisk whispers behind his back. Rain did not stop for days. It turned the streets into rivers of mud and litter. Inside the small grocery store, the steady drum of raindrops on the metal roof became a part of their daily rhythm. For Keanu, or John as everyone knew him, each day felt like a quiet test of patience and heart. Sam showed up every morning, sometimes late, sometimes on time, but he showed up. He swept the floors, carried heavy boxes, and even helped old Mr. Parker, a grumpy regular, carry his groceries to his rusty car. It was clear Sam had never worked a real job like this before, but he tried. When he got something wrong, Keanu stood by his side, guiding him, never scolding, never raising his voice. Mary watched them from behind the counter, her eyes soft but always worried. Business was still slow. The new supermarket down the street offered discounts Mary could never match. A few loyal customers stayed, but every day felt like a battle to keep the doors open. One evening, when the rain had finally eased into a soft drizzle, the door opened and in walked a woman Keanu hadn't seen before. She wore an expensive coat and held a designer handbag that looked out of place next to the dented shelves. Her perfume followed her like a ghost. Mary greeted her politely. "Good evening, Claire." Claire. That name lingered in Keanu's mind. He listened quietly as he stacked oranges near the window. "Mary," Claire said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I heard you hired help." Mary glanced at Keanu, then at Sam, who was mopping up a puddle by the freezer. "Yes," Mary said carefully. "John and Sam have been helping me a lot." Claire smirked, her eyes cold. "Help? You mean that boy who used to steal bread from you? And him?" She gestured at Keanu. "Where did you find him? He looks like he sleeps in the alley." Keanu felt Sam freeze behind him. He turned slowly, locking eyes with Claire. He stayed silent, but his calm stare made her shift uncomfortably. "They're good workers," Mary said, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly. "Good workers?" Claire laughed under her breath. "Mary, wake up. You're too soft. This is why your store is dying. You trust the wrong people. That boy will steal from you again. And this man, who even is he?" Keanu stepped forward then, his heart pounding, but his voice calm. "We're just here to work, ma'am. That's all." Claire sneered. "Work? You think a place like this will save people like you? Get real. When this store closes, don't expect anyone to care." Her words left a heavy silence behind. She turned and walked out, her expensive perfume lingering long after the door slammed shut. Sam dropped the mop, his face burned with shame. "She's right. People like her will always see me as a thief. Maybe I should just go." Keanu reached out and put a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Don't. If you walk away now, she wins. She wants to see you give up. Prove her wrong." Sam looked at him, his eyes wet. "Why do you care so much, John? You don't owe me anything." Keanu's throat tightened. He wished again he could tell the truth, that he was not just John, that he knew how it felt to be judged, underestimated, pushed aside, but he couldn't, not yet, "because someone once gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it," Keanu said, "and it changed my life." Mary came around the counter and wrapped an arm around Sam's shoulders. "This store is more than just food on shelves," she said gently. "It's hope. We're not giving up on you." That night, after they locked the door and turned off the flickering sign, Keanu walked alone through the wet streets. Puddles reflected the city lights, and thunder rolled far away in the distance. He felt the weight of it all, the fear in Mary's eyes, the shame in Sam's voice, the cruel words of people like Claire who would never understand what it meant to stand on the edge. He wondered how long he could stay undercover, how long he could fight as John before he would need to reveal who he really was. Part of him feared they would feel betrayed. Part of him hoped they would understand. When he finally reached his small rented room, He sat by the window and stared at the dark sky, whispering a promise to himself. He would not let them drown. He would stand by them, no matter what storms came. The city outside was cold and uncaring, but inside that little store, he would build something warmer, one small act of kindness at a time. The day the truth cracked open the next morning brought a weak sun that tried its best to warm the damp streets. Inside the little grocery store, there was an odd feeling in the air, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Keanu, still John to them, arrived before dawn. He wiped down the shelves, organized the fruits, and fixed the squeaky door hinge that had annoyed Mary for weeks. Small things, but they made him feel like he belonged there, like he was not just passing through. Sam came in just after sunrise, eyes red from lack of sleep. He didn't say much, but he tied his apron tight and went straight to work, sweeping up old leaves that the wind had carried inside. Mary noticed the change too. She didn't ask questions. She just smiled at him when he passed by. But what none of them knew was that whispers about John were growing louder. Claire's cruel words had spread through the neighborhood like cold wind through cracks in a window. Some regular customers started asking questions. "Mary, who's that man?" "Old Mr. Parker asked as Keanu helped him carry bags to his car. "He doesn't talk much." "What's he hiding?" Mary defended him. "He's a good man, Mr. Parker. He works harder than anyone I've ever met." But the doubt stayed, crawling into corners of their trust like a stain that wouldn't wash away. That afternoon, a big black SUV pulled up in front of the store. The windows were tinted so dark they reflected the street like a mirror. Mary frowned when she saw it. She didn't recognize the car, but she felt its presence like a storm cloud. Two men in dark suits stepped out. They wore sunglasses even, though the day was gray. They looked out of place on the cracked sidewalk next to the faded grocery sign. They walked inside, ignoring the bell's gentle chime. Keanu was restocking the bread shelf when he saw them. Something inside him went cold, not fear, exactly, but the dread of a secret about to break free. "Excuse me," one of the men said loudly. His voice made Sam flinch behind the counter. "We're looking for Mr. Reeves." Mary glanced at Keanu, confused. "Mr. Who?" The taller man pulled off his glasses, his eyes sharp and searching. "Mr. Keanu Reeves, we know he's here." Keanu put down the loaf of bread he was holding. The store felt too small, too quiet. He saw Sam staring at him, eyes wide. Mary's hands shook where they rested on the register. Keanu stepped forward. Slowly, "That's me," he said softly. "But here, my name is John." Silence wrapped around them, broken only by the low hum of the old fridge. Sam's mouth dropped open. "Wait, you're Keanu Reeves, like the actor, the guy in the movies?" Mary's eyes filled with tears that she blinked back quickly. "You lied to us?" Keanu took off his cap and ran a hand through his hair. He looked so ordinary in his old hoodie and stained apron. Not like the man on movie posters, but like a tired friend who had carried boxes and made tea for them when they were cold. "I didn't lie," Keanu said, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted to see the world without the lights and cameras. I wanted to understand how people live when nobody is watching. I wanted to help." The men in suits cleared their throats. "Mr. Reeves, we need to take you back. Your team is worried." "Your schedule." Keanu held up a hand. "Not yet." He turned to Mary, who looked like she might collapse from the shock. "Mary, I never meant to hurt you. I didn't come here to make a show out of your life. I came because I needed to remember what it means to be human. You gave me that. You gave me a place to be real." Then he looked at Sam, whose face was pale but whose eyes were burning bright with something new. "Respect, maybe, or understanding. And you," Keanu said, his voice cracking. "You reminded me what it means to fight for something. You didn't let the world crush you, even when it tried." Sam's lips trembled. "You're really him." "Why? Why me?" Keanu stepped closer and put a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Because you matter. Because your story is worth saving. You're not just a kid stealing bread. You're a son trying to keep his mother alive. That means something. You mean something." Mary wiped her eyes with her apron. Her voice shook. "All this time, you were him. I'm still me." Keanu said, "I'm still John. I'm still your worker who sweeps floors and carries boxes. The rest is just noise." The men in suits shifted impatiently by the door. "Mr. Reeves, please. The press is already looking for you." Keanu turned back to Mary and Sam. "This isn't the end. I promise you. I will not disappear. You gave me a family here, and I won't forget you." Outside, a small crowd had started to gather, their faces pressed against the glass, some holding up phones to record the moment they realized who the quiet man with the broom really was. Inside that tiny store, a secret broke open, not to shame them, but to show the world that behind fame, there can still be a heart that beats for ordinary people. Keanu took a deep breath as he stepped forward, ready to face the crowd, ready to protect the people he now loved like his own. The promise kept when Keanu stepped out into the street. The air felt electric, the drizzle had stopped, but the sidewalks glistened as if the sky had wept just for this moment. People gathered around the store, their phones raised, their eyes wide with disbelief. Whispers turned into gasps. The man they had walked past every day, the man who had packed their groceries or mopped the floor, was the same man they had watched on giant screens in dark theaters. Keanu kept his head low at first, shielding Mary and Sam, who stood behind him in the doorway. The two men in suits stayed close, trying to push the growing crowd back, but Keanu lifted a hand to stop them. He didn't want a wall between him and these people. He had spent weeks breaking down walls. A reporter squeezed forward, shoving a microphone into his face. "Keanu, is it true you've been working here undercover? Why this store? What were you hiding?" Keanu looked at the reporter, then at the sea of curious faces, some kind, some hungry for gossip. He took a slow breath. His voice was steady but soft, carrying through the street like a warm wind. "I wasn't hiding," he said. "I was living. Sometimes you forget who you are when everyone wants something from you. This place reminded me that small acts of kindness matter more than fame." He turned to Mary, who clutched her apron like a lifeline. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her smile was strong. Next to her, Sam stood tall, his chin lifted for the first time in weeks. Keanu pointed to them. "This is Mary. She kept this store open when big companies tried to crush her. She gave food to people who couldn't pay. Even when she was barely getting by, she didn't do it for cameras. She did it because her heart is bigger than any bank account." The crowd shifted. Some lowered their phones, seeing Mary for the first time not as just a shopkeeper, but as a hero in her own quiet way. "And this is Sam," Keanu continued, his voice cracking a little. "He's just a kid fighting for his mother's life. He made mistakes, who hasn't? But he chose to stand up and work instead of giving up. He's stronger than any of us know." Sam looked down, embarrassed by the sudden attention, but a tiny smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. People started clapping, hesitant at first, then louder, until it echoed through the narrow street. Mary stepped forward. "John." "Keanu, you don't have to do this." But Keanu shook his head. "Yes, I do." He turned back to the reporter, who still held the microphone up like a sword waiting to strike. "What happens now?" the reporter asked. Keanu looked at the store, its cracked sign and tired windows. He thought about all the nights he had mopped those floors, the quiet talks over cups of tea in the back room, the way hope had slowly grown, like a seed in broken concrete. "Now," Keanu said, "I helped them the way they helped me." He faced the crowd, his voice strong. "This store will not close. I'll make sure of that. I'm investing whatever it takes to keep it open, fix what's broken, and give people like Mary and Sam the chance they deserve. This place will not be swallowed by another big supermarket." "Not on my watch," a cheer rose up from the crowd. Not for a movie star, but for a man who had chosen to stand beside people everyone else overlooked. Sam grabbed his arm, his eyes wide. "You don't have to do that." Keanu squeezed his shoulder. "Yes, I do. Because you matter. Your mom matters. This neighborhood matters." He turned to Mary and pressed something into her trembling hand, a small folded check with more zeros than she had ever seen. She tried to refuse it, but he held her hands tight. "This isn't charity," he whispered. "This is a thank you." Tears streamed down her face as she hugged him, the crowd clapping around them. The men in suits stepped forward again, reminding him that the world beyond this corner still waited. Interviews, contracts, red carpets, all of it. But Keanu didn't rush. He stood there a moment longer, letting the weight of his promise settle deep in his bones. He saw Sam look at the store sign, hope flickering behind his tired eyes like a candle refusing to die. When Keanu finally stepped into the black SUV, the crowd parted to let him through. He turned one last time to Mary and Sam, raising a hand. In a small wave, "Keep the light on for me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. And in that little corner store that smelled of fresh bread and old floor cleaner, a story that began with a secret ended with something far more powerful. A family found in the most unexpected place, bound not by blood, but by kindness and the simple truth that every soul deserves to be seen.